All right. So I want to welcome everybody to our coordinated community response. And I'm Margaret Firerobin, and I send these notices from Appalachian Promise Alliance, who really started doing these, and Family Promise of Bristol, that it fits even more with our mission with Family Promise, with trying to help people to sustainable living and get them in housing and provide wraparound services to support them until they can reach stage of being sustainable lives. So we meet every fourth Friday. We started during COVID and we have continued less frequently. But that's what our schedule is. We have a variety of programs. Feel free to suggest any programs that you might know, and we'll be happy to consider them. We try to do things that are Tennessee and Virginia as much as possible, or have two different people, one from Tennessee, one from Virginia, if we can. And I know some of y'all are regulars, really appreciate that. We do record it, and we do have a YouTube channel. I know y'all probably got my email with the YouTube channel and our program from last time on Housing First. So know that those are there. And if you want to send the recording to anybody who's missed it, that would be great. I like to say, because some people have to leave, we work with Bristol Coalitions, which is primarily Virginia group, but it's been around a lot longer than Coordinated Community Response. They meet on the second Tuesday, and as far as I know, their next meeting is July 8th. It's always interesting when it comes so fast. It feels like that should be the first Tuesday. And I try to get forward their email when it comes out on the Friday before the Tuesday. Our next one should be July 25th at 11 o'clock. And at this point, I don't have a program to announce, so we'll see what we plan for that one. Okay, so with that, I want to welcome Willard Robertson and appreciate what he's doing these days with working on problem gambling. I like how that is probably the right wording, rather than gambling addiction or something along those lines. So Willard, if you want to talk just a little bit about who you are and what you do, and then start in, that would be absolutely great.
All right, sure thing. Well, first and foremost, I'm grateful for the opportunity to speak with you all this morning. Appreciate any chance we get to talk about what has been my primary work for 3.5 years now. Um, I live in Abingdon, work for Highlands Community Services as a prevention specialist. I've been involved in some form of education work or behavioral health work for 30 years now, which is, I'm feeling it a little bit, but I have really enjoyed my prevention role because it's sort of those two pieces of experience have come together here. So uh, I came on board just before the Bristol Casino opened because the state of Virginia had appropriated some funding for the community service boards in Virginia to spend. And our particular CSB said, well, let's bring in a full-time staff person and tackle it that way. Lifelong Virginian, Southwestern Virginian in particular, proud Appalachian. I'll keep it short. The most exciting thing for me is my grandbaby's due in about 3 weeks, first one, and I'm tickled and trying to contain my excitement. I'm sure some of you understand. So I'm going to offer just a general overview. I am going to speak heavily from a Virginia perspective because that's where my work is. I will offer a little bit on Tennessee. I don't primarily work in Tennessee, but one of the things I do appreciate, those of you that understand how the community service boards work in Virginia, I don't work exclusively in Washington County and the city of Bristol, Virginia. The remaining community service boards to the west, we do a lot of things together. And I think we also keep that mentality. We all live in this area. So, like when I go to the doctor, I go to Johnson City, because that's where my doctor's office is. And then back and forth. Sometimes I shop for certain things in Tennessee and other things in Virginia. And I know we all do some of that. So, and I'll just mention it now in case I forget, but there was some data I got to look at. It's got some age on it now, maybe at least a year old. But when some analysis was done of the people that do attend or participate at the Bristol Casino, interestingly, the majority of participants were from Tennessee. only by a few percentage points, but that gives you some idea of who. And of course, people come from all over and all over the world now that it's become quite huge with the new part that's open. Um, but Tennesseans outrank Virginians in terms of participation. Additional roles for me, I serve on the board for the Virginia Council on Problem Gambling, and I'm very proud of that because it's been a great resource for me. I've learned a lot from the people on that. It's very much a working board for a not-for-profit, no paid positions, though we finally have gotten some funding for that to change, which we're very excited about. And so in the coming months, we'll be bringing on an executive director and working harder on this. So anyway, just a few things about that. Also see a couple of familiar names on here. Nikki and I aren't related, but I like to tease her that we are. And I'm also serve as a coordinator for the Washington County Prevention Coalition. So I know Nikki and Jesse from joining me in that endeavor. Let's see here. I'm going to run through just a bunch of information and try to leave time so you can ask me anything you want. Start real general here. Gambling is risking something of value in an activity when you're not sure you're going to win. We've been doing it almost since the dawn of time in some form or another. In Virginia, legal gambling really started around 1973 with some approval of some horse racing stuff. But when it really took off was the Virginia Lottery in 1988, and then more recently with legalizing casinos. We'll talk more about that shortly. So let's take a quick look at what's legal in Virginia, and then after this, I'll show you what's legal in Tennessee. Sports betting. There's 14 legal sports betting companies in Virginia. That's the thing that's growing the fastest. It's just amazing the amount of money that is coming into the state from the revenues from that company and the amount of money that's being made by companies doing this. Land-based casinos, of course, we had the first in the state in Bristol. There's also casinos operating in Danville and Portsmouth, two more on the way, and there's legislation in Virginia to bring even one or two more on in different parts of the state. Of course, the Virginia Lottery, like Tennessee, it was put there to help fund education. Um, we're all probably familiar enough with what the lottery is and so forth. Horse racing and parimutuel betting. This is big in Virginia. Betting on horse races, historical horse race machines. They've got some leeway. There's a handful of what's called Rosies in Virginia. We don't have one. I think the closest one to us would be in Vinton, which is just outside of Roanoke. Daily fantasy sports. Charitable gaming, a lot of people don't even realize that, say, bingo, raffles, that's a form of gaming that is regulated, requires a permit in Virginia. I think they look the other way when, somebody at the local high school does a raffle to raise money for a field trip or whatever. But quite literally, games like bingo and raffles are supposed to be regulated and just to raise funds for a not-for-profit. And then social gambling, that's games of chance, like in a personal residence. And then skill games, and that's a real crazy one to mention there. I'm sure if you go back a year, plenty of you, if you've stopped in any service station in Virginia, you probably saw what looked like slot machines. They're called skill games. We call them gray machines because they were enabled because of some gray area in the law. Now, currently, you shouldn't be seeing them in Virginia, though there is proposed legislation to bring them back. We do hear reports occasionally here and there in Virginia where people are loopholing. I won't go into that, but they've found loopholes to continue to operate them. I have a lot of concerns about skill games because of their accessibility and because the price point and so forth. They feel predatory. Probably not a team player kind of thing to say, because the other thing I should mention up front in this presentation is in my role with Highlands Community Services and my role with Virginia Council on Problem Gambling, we take a neutral stance on gambling. I've had plenty of people say, well, why don't you just be against it? Just say don't do it and tell people why they shouldn't. Well, there's a lot of reasons, and I'll mention just a few. For starters, it's legal in Virginia and Tennessee. And, we're not going to really pit agencies against each other. We also know that there's a lot of financial benefits to it. But the other side of that too is there's a percentage of folks that are harmed by it. And so, our job is to work with those folks and create that awareness so people don't go there. And then additionally, we don't ever want to pit ourselves against the industry. It's always better when we can work together with Hard Rock Casino, for example, and Virginia Lottery. We have strong working relationships with both of those and other entities in the state, but those are the ones that impact us most locally. Now take a quick look at Tennessee. You notice the list is a little shorter. Also online sports betting. Tennessee came online with sports betting about a year before Virginia did. Then you also has the lottery in Tennessee. Charitable gaming like bingos and raffles are here as well. Horse racing and parimutuel wagering, that's legal in Tennessee. Daily fantasy sports, just like in Virginia, and then also certain private games. So just try to at least give a little credence to what's going on. So I think the data I'll share with you would be similar. It's just going to be probably on a slightly larger scale on the Virginia side because we offer it, the state offers more forms of legal gambling. Um, but Tennessee's looked at as doing strong prevention and awareness efforts as well. So I'm going to start with just a few words on what responsible gambling is. Some statistics say even 98% of people can gamble without any problems. And so those are the folks that do it for fun. Those are the folks that know to set limits, go into the casino, for example, with a budget, and they're okay if they lose money. They also are aware of a few don'ts, like not borrowing money to gamble or being heavily under the influence of alcohol or even other drugs. Certainly not to do it when you're in a distressed emotional state and then chasing losses, which is the big one. People always thinking they could win it back. So somebody that gambles responsibly doesn't do those things. Let's talk about problem gambling, sometimes referred to as gambling addiction or gambling disorder. And it's gambling behavior that's damaging to a person or their family. This is probably where it's worth mentioning that we often refer to gambling, someone with a gambling problem, gambling addiction, as we call it, the hidden addiction. There's a couple of reasons for that. First and foremost, if somebody's been engaged in long-term substance abuse, you probably are going to be able to see that on their person and their overall well-being. Yet a gambling addiction functions so similarly, but we don't see those outward signs. The other thing, which it also shares with substance abuse, is there's so much stigma and shame about it, and it's meant to be hidden. You don't want somebody to know you lose, that you put yourself in financial jeopardy, your family in financial jeopardy, and so it stays hidden for those reasons as well. Classic signs and symptoms: when it preoccupies you a great deal, the need to bet more, going back to try to win your money back, which we refer to as chasing losses, when your emotional state becomes altered because you're irritable, when you try to stop or cut down, you feel like you can't control yourself. Um, Even though there's negative consequences in place, classic example is debt. Um, you continue to do it, and in extreme cases, causing bankruptcy, legal problems, losing your job, family, things like that. The key thing is at the end of that statement, and thinking about suicide. It is a common misnomer that someone with a gambling problem, it's a financial problem. And I'm going to show you some data here that it certainly is not just a financial problem. That certainly is one thing, but it also impacts somebody's overall well-being. We'll get into that here shortly. So I'm going to shift this now. How does somebody get help? Well, we're fortunate in that the casino, on all the lottery tickets, most forms of gambling, they help by providing the hotline number. And there's the 1-800-GAMBLER, which is sort of understood to be a national number. That number below it, that 1-888-352-3500, is Virginia's number, but they both go to the same call center. The other thing we're learning is that younger and younger people are notifying the hotline is the importance of having a text and chat option, because younger folks seem to be much more comfortable with those options than picking up the phone and talking to what starts out as a stranger. So that's how the whole process often starts. We like to keep that number out there and make it aware because, statistically, another high rate of person that's reported to are clergy. Somebody will go talk to their pastor and say, I have this going on. And the pastor will know what to do from a spiritual help perspective. But if additional help is needed, then this would be the place to start that process, just calling the 800 number. The nice thing about 1-800-GAMBLER, or our Virginia specific number, is even if, say, that person that calls the number is, say, the spouse of or the sibling of somebody with that problem, they have resources and support for that person as well, and education for them to understand how to work with and help their loved one. Here's some hotline data. And what I've decided to do with you all today is just give you the composite of 2024. I could show you the first quarter of this year as well, but I think this really tells the story. When you look at that number, 15,841, that's a total number of helpline calls in Virginia that we received in 2024. It's a huge, almost 50% increase from the prior year. And our intakes went up as well to over 1,000. You can see a little note at the bottom. Intakes are when the caller directly asks for help for problem gambling. And then there's a step-through process that I'll talk more about just a little bit later. When you look at Virginia specifically in 2024, here's the type of gambling people report, at least as their primary. Now, there's a lot of research that shows when somebody has become addicted to gambling, they're probably engaged in more than one form. And the data will be collected on that too. But here's what scores the highest: internet non-sports And that's basically anything that could be like a casino on your phone, casino type games on your phone, that sort of thing. That's 23%, but look at what's close behind. Slots at the casino, which historically has always been one of the highest on reported items, and then sports betting right up there. And it's only been legal such a short time, but look at it. And that's again, Virginia specific calls. Casino other obviously registers big. A lot of folks don't even realize that playing the stock market can be seen as a form of gambling, and we can measure the number of calls we get where that's where someone is specifically struggling. More data on that. The thing I really like to lift up here is when you look at the age, and yes, even teenagers register in our call volume, but the highest percentage is 25 to 34-year-olds. And they're obviously male more often than not. Though the number of females that are seeking help, that number is slowly climbing as well. I have it on there that 5% of the calls to the hotline come from our region, essentially Southwest Virginia as a cluster. Obviously, one of the reasons we want to keep pushing that number out there, having conversations and opportunities to speak like this, is to increase that awareness. So I'm going to go over real quick what we're doing locally, regionally, and statewide in Virginia. So for starters, creating as much awareness as possible. You're giving me that opportunity here today. And again, I'm very grateful. I'll show you a couple of other things we do. If you've traveled north on 81 in the last 2 years, you get up close to Glade Spring, and you probably we're not running this billboard now. We ran it for a year. I'm very proud of it because I think it has a positive tone. We've got that guy that fits that target age bracket, probably around 30 years old, sitting on a creek fishing. And the tagline is a better way to spend your time. But if you need help, here's the number. So I like the warm fuzzies of that and the positive message. I hope we bring that back or a similar one back in the near future. But that's one simple way that we do this. This is the billboard messaging that's on there now, more hard hitting and direct. But again, we have seen nationally and in the state an increased use of text and chat. So we really wanted to blare that out there. So that's what's in that same spot, again, close to Glade Spring right now. We attend any event we can attend to talk. I've recently attended the Elder Abuse Conference put on by Southwest Virginia Legal Aid, specifically trying to offer information on older adults and gambling issues, just any place we can create conversations. Another thing we do is we have a gambling prevention conference in March. This is going to be our third one. I may be a little bit hard to read on your screen. I'm not sure, but we've had a little over 100 folks attend 2 years ago and also last year. We've already scheduled the one to come, and we've targeted two particular speakers. Dr. Weiner, if you do any work in addiction, any form of addiction, I encourage you to check Dr. Weiner out. His work is fantastic. He has a really strong podcast. He's a researcher, and he's also a very good presenter. I had a chance to see him in Maryland and left that going, we have got to book this guy. So he'll be our keynoter, and then Dorothy Cheney will also be joining us. We'll add some more speakers, but we wanted to lock those two in. Dorothy does a ton of work with coalition development. She's a very gifted speaker, and she's really a problem gambling expert. So in helping communities engage and grow in knowledge and understanding and working from a coalition standpoint for this. So flag that. We'd love to have you come. We do lunch, the whole thing, details, and I'll be sure and share information with Ms. Fire Robin on that to share with you all if you'd like. Next thing is, and this is the thing I'm most excited about. I'm trying to be mindful of my time here, but the Appalachian Substance Abuse Coalition Problem Gambling Work Group. Now, why am I so excited about this? Well, I'll talk more about this in a moment too, but for starters, I'm sure many of you on this call are familiar with ASAC, a strong regional presence all over Southwestern Virginia, but doesn't necessarily stop at the borders when the work requires it or asks it not to. Linda Austin, strong work with this coalition. And so Linda and the board came up with the idea of creating some work groups, and it just thrilled my heart that he said we should have a problem gambling work group. So we've decided that there's a handful of us that are working together, two folks that are working in peer recovery as a peer recovery specialist, and three of us that are in prevention. That's where we're kind of at right now. And we're going to create access to a very simple 1-minute screening tool that allows someone to just gain awareness, like, do I have a problem or not? We also have developed a confidential way to collect that data so we can data is really hard to come by right now. You see our hotline numbers, but we need more. Also, we're going to target recovery communities because, and there's probably a clinically better way to say this, but essentially what we want to do is we've become aware of, at least subjectively, of sometimes folks develop a replacement addiction. Again, I think there's probably better terminology for that. And if you know it, please talk to me afterwards. But you know, I've known folks that are successfully navigating their substance use recovery, but they've replaced that with, well, I'm going to go hit these skill games, or, you know, I'm doing regular nights at the casino. They're still getting that dopamine hit, that rush, that preoccupation, what have you. So there's a little of that too, but we also know that comorbidity is so strong. So first of all, I share a little piece of information here with you. We know that alcohol and drug abuse problems increase 4 to 7 times among gamblers, and that's alarming. And honestly, having done this for 3.5 years, I still find it very difficult to create a conversation just about gambling harm. People say, "Is that a thing?" I've literally had that said to me, or, "Oh, I guess that's because there's now a casino in the area." But there's so much more to it than that. And so this is alarming to us, and it undergirds why I'm so grateful that we have the opportunity to work through the big network that ASAC has to increase awareness about this alone. And then what also goes with that is compulsive gambling and suicide. We know that the rates are listed in many studies as the highest among people that are experiencing gambling harm, whether it's ideation or attempts, either way, right? So the other thing I do, I told you I'm full time as a problem gambling prevention specialist, but like a lot of you, I wear more than one hat. So I teach a lot of safe talk suicide awareness trainings, and I don't table anything about problem gambling at an event or whatever. That I'm also not advocating for suicide awareness and the trainings that we offer and that are available in our region. It is huge and extremely important. So ASAC's going to give us some room to work on that. Next, I want to tell you about something that's more statewide, and I do suspect this one's harder to read. But a couple of years ago, there was the Virginia Partnership for Gaming and Health that was created. And I'll just try to do a quick verbal overview, though this flyer that I have up will give you more thorough details. But a couple of really amazing things. First of all, it's growing a network of treatment providers across the state. And that treatment process even goes as far as at self-pace and at no cost, a person can get 24 hours credit, I believe, and a certification as a therapist in gambling addiction. And then the other part of that that's so important was maybe a couple of more is the Virginia Partnership also works with the peer recovery specialists that there's one in each region in Virginia that if that person calls the hotline and they want to follow through and get resources, they're connected with that person most likely in their region, but it doesn't have to be. Sometimes they decide that on which one of them might be a good fit. So we have one in Bristol, Elizabeth Childress, that works for Virginia Partnership for Gaming and Health, and she does the intake process for folks and starts connecting them to resources. Online Gamblers Anonymous meeting. Elizabeth and another person have created women-specific support groups that meet weekly. I could go on and on, but and then see there's the intake process, the equipping of therapists, and the other thing that's really powerful on there is insurance is tricky when gambling addiction is a primary diagnosis, but we even have funding through VPGH here that they will be a pay of last resort. So what that really means is the cost of treatment is not an obstacle, which is really amazing. So I really like to sing the praises of this as much as I can because they're doing amazing work, and it's really putting a big strong foot forward here in Virginia on setting ourselves up for what's an emerging public health crisis. I mentioned this already, and it's kind of odd. Maybe I stuck it here at the end, but we do keep a neutral stance on legalized gambling. And we advocate solely for those affected by problem gambling and to work and educate about responsible gambling and then to try to prevent gambling harm. I want to be sure you see these resources. Now, of course, I'm biased. Like I said, I serve on the board for the Virginia Council on Problem Gambling, but our website's quite strong, regardless of whether you're working in prevention, treatment, or recovery. Tremendous lists of resources, screening tools. I could go on and on. Newsletter that is constantly informative. So I really want to lift that up. There's VPGH's web address if you're interested in more, just more information on their work. It's a strong site too. And then the National Council on Problem Gambling, which has been around a good while and does really strong work, lots of national advocacy. My contact information's on here as well. You're welcome to reach out to me with any question. If I don't know the answer, I'll do my best to find it. And it's even if it's right down to like, I just know somebody that has a problem, what should I do? I'm happy to talk with you about that, and we'll offer any help that we can. Well, that's what I've thrown out there to you. I know it's a lot and spoken rather quickly, but if you've got questions or comments, I'm happy to hear them.
Right. I see Nikki's signing off. She had to come in quickly and leave quickly, so we're glad she was here. So I want to say thank you, and that was awesome. And thank you for including Tennessee stuff too. That's great. And I know in our health and a lot of things, we're very similar for Northeast Tennessee and Southwest Virginia. We do have differences with Southwest Virginia being more rural than Northeast Tennessee is, at least in this part of the Northeast Tennessee. But I had a question. Is there a parallel person to you in Northeast Tennessee? Or because I'm not aware of anyone doing this work specifically.
Yeah, I'm not aware either. It's something I have become aware of somewhat recently, and I'm going to be reaching out and making some connections. But at East Tennessee State University, they now have what's called the Gambling Clinic, which I believe is primarily treatment oriented. But I hear great things about it. And of course, one of the things that I'm really key on about that, I sort of spoke to when I first started my conversation was being in Johnson City, look how easy that would be for folks from my area in upper Northeast Tennessee to receive help if it's that kind of help that's needed. The other thing I know about them is as I've been growing in my own learning, I'm assuming the researcher that's primarily responsible for that being at ETSU has been in Memphis for several years, Dr. James Whalen. And I think now I'm understanding there's a third one opened up at University in or around Nashville. So part of my plan to be more of a good neighbor and grow my own awareness of what's going on the Tennessee side is to reach out to the gambling clinic at ETSU and try to learn more. I'm excited that it's there, and I hear great things
Right.
about it.
Right. Yeah, if you do, if you make that contact, that'd be great to share. It'd be good to have them on here too. At some
Absolutely.
point. That'd be good and helpful. The other is if you can share your PowerPoint, I'll send it out with the follow-up as well, so people can go back and refer to some of your data and resources would be great.
Happy to do
Um,
that.
So for those of you not driving, do you have questions or comments or things you want to ask or say? Sounds like it's quiet and we know several people are driving. So
Yeah.
um, yeah, I mean, I like the way it's presented with problem gambling, and we know just like other alcohol use versus abuse, I mean, there's different levels. Not everybody who drinks alcohol has a problem. Not everybody who has gambling has a problem. So,
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that. That's something that there's sort of a learning curve, I think, right now, and at least for me, and I think in other localities like Virginia, where we haven't been at it as long. So I know one term we're using more and more now is gambling harm, and I'm more comfortable with that as I've been using it more. I think when you look at for so many years, we've used things like the Virginia Council on Problem Gambling, or that my legal or technical job title is Problem Gambling Prevention Specialist. We're sort of stuck with it. But like you, we've had so much happen in the last handful of years, making us more aware of language that mislabels or stigmatizes or doesn't really speak as directly to what's happening as it can. So there's a learning curve with that, particularly in problem gambling, like probably other fields. And I'm embracing it and learning like our words can mean a great deal, and how we label and discuss something can mean a great deal. So yeah, I appreciate you bringing that up because that's certainly something we're working on right now.
right. Yeah. Um, I had something I was going to ask. Anybody else chime in with any questions or comments or thoughts? All right. Well, yeah, so it's a lot to think about and a lot to learn, and it certainly is. Oh, I know what I was going to ask. Does research show, so we know, okay, we know people with adverse childhood experiences with trauma may have more of a propensity toward addiction of at least alcohol, drugs. Does that also show in gambling? Is it where depending on, and also genetically, because we know some of it's genetic, or perhaps it's the the DNA of previous experiences or whatever. What do you know on any of that?
I can't speak a lot to the genetic part, though. My suspicion, based on all the learning I've done, is there's a definite connection, just like we would see with other addictions. In terms of ACEs, ACEs is hard to measure, but we talk about trauma. I think the stories that I've heard, because we're learning the importance, even in prevention work, of being informed by people who have their own recovery story. And one of the most compelling, and I'll make this rather brief and with respect, because I realize I'm sharing someone else's story, but I've heard it a couple of times now. It was very impactful for me. But the man's name is Dan Trolero. You can hear him tell his story on YouTube on a channel called Soft White Underbelly. But just hopefully he won't mind. But just two pieces of his story. He told me about, I think he'd lost his mom at a young age, and his dad wasn't very open and affectionate. But at age 12, his dad took him to the horse track, and he realized if he learned as much as he could about horses, that he and his dad could connect more. And so that's where his gambling journey seemed to have started. And then he advances forward, and he worked on, I guess, Wall Street in New York when 9/11 happened, and witnessed a great deal of that. Part of his story is he'd gotten married just a few months before that happened and lost 14 friends that were at his wedding. And he went home to New Jersey where he could still look over and see what was taking place, and went in and turned on his computer and started playing blackjack or something like that, and realized 45 minutes passed and he wasn't dealing with his grief. And I could tell you so many stories like that I've heard, which subjectively, with my own ears, absolutely acknowledge that trauma is a big impact. One other much shorter situation, I was aware of an elderly lady who lost her husband, and to help her get her mind off things, her friend took her to the casino in Norfolk. And in a relatively short time, she couldn't stop, and lost everything that she had. But she also went on to develop an amazing recovery story and work with other seniors. So, it goes on and on. So I think I'm really grateful you bring up ACEs and trauma, because to me that informs so much in any field in prevention that we work in, but any initiative. But I think very much so it's a part of gambling harm.
So you're describing things, and this isn't your, it's not your field or whatever, but is there work being done on on problem social media for, because to get away from things and what people do, and particularly when you talk that 45 minutes have passed, well, that happens to probably a lot of us. You start in and all of a sudden it's been 45
Yeah.
minutes. You did not intend to
Mhm.
spend that time. You have a whole lot of other things to do, and
Yeah.
here you are. Yeah, do you know, is any work being done on that or?
There's a great deal of work being done on that. I think more and more, well, put it to you like this. The biggest reason I wanted to recruit Dr. Weiner to come to our conference next March was he's done so much research about this very thing. I think Dr. Weiner uses this analogy like, we wouldn't give our 4-year-old an axe and turn him loose in the backyard and say, go cut up some trees. But we'll give an 18-month-old an iPad and say, have at it, play. And I think it's a difficult spot, because we know our use of technology is only going to increase. But at the same time, we're finding more and more like the roots of all this is screen addiction. Um, Not that everybody that's addicted to viewing things on their screen is going to develop a gambling problem, but you can't have one without the other. The long-term thing I've heard experts say is coming is is we're going to have casinos in our pocket. Everything that you can do at brick and mortar is going to be on your phone. And we're well on our way to that now. And so what does that do? That just chases more people into that. And then I'm that old school guy that says, what really changes the world is connection and then relationships. And that's how empathy is developed. But we're so disconnected, even though we want to think because of the screens we're more so, but we're not. We're so disconnected now, and empathy is the thing that is eroding most. And I teach a couple of curriculums at Patrick Henry High School up in Glade Spring, and I write that word on the board at every class I do, and bring, because I advocate for and believe that it is my responsibility as an adult in that person's life, even if it's only for 6 1-hour sessions, to do everything I can to champion empathy. But it is an upstream swim too, because that to me, the digital world. impedes that so much. But here's another thing I'm learning. I've been trying to teach because I'm getting close to 60 years old, and I think about like there's so much I can't relate to. I didn't grow up in the video game era and that, so I grew up on a farm. I don't understand a lot of this stuff, but I would tell you there's a difference in the so-called virtual world and the real world. But what I'm learning from people that are teaching me about the younger generations is, they don't see a difference. Their worldview is so different than mine, but again, my role is how can I teach empathy? How can I teach compassion for each other and self-care, right? So, but the best way to do that I'm finding right now is what can I do to understand a young person's, mindset more? My daughter's 24 and, she's becoming my teacher on this very thing because I've got this ready source to ask questions of. So, yeah, and there's absolutely a strong connection. It's the number one reason we recruited Dr. Weiner as our keynoter because I saw him in Maryland back in January at a conference, and my mind went kaboom. Like this all makes sense. It's almost like I'm always looking for where's the earlier and earlier entry point for prevention to work. And like anything else, it's pretty much in the womb or with mom and dad before you even get
Yeah.
here.
Yeah. Yeah, so with Appalachian Promise, the main program is parenting education, and working with parenting educators in the region, Tennessee and Virginia region. But Samantha Gray, who does that, has taught attachment parenting for years and years and years. And that's with attachment theory that empathy is developed with the relationship between that baby and the primary caregiver. And usually the mom, but doesn't have to be. And if that doesn't develop, then it's that early that empathy it develops,
Yep.
and it's not even terrible parenting or terrible people is the world we live in that's on fast track that we're not able to spend the time. We're not able to do the things we know we need to be doing. So it can even happen with in healthy families or whatever,
Yep.
where it's just um, not enough time, not enough concentration.
I've done some reading on that program and the work that Ms. Gray does. I'm really grateful for it. I adopted a child that had attachment disorder um, and just watched that and had to learn about it that way. It really wasn't something I was familiar with in my prior mental health roles. And it's difficult, because it involves a certain amount of unlearning for the child and I guess the parent
Mhm.
too. And we all know unlearning something's harder than learning it. So.
Mhm.
But I'm really glad you all have that program. That's fantastic.
Thank you. So what I wanted to see if there are people here, and we've lost several, but if anybody has ideas, first off, we don't know what you've done to connect with other groups or get the word out or whatever. So we could ask you some of that, but we also could go ahead and just make suggestions, and maybe you've done it, maybe you haven't, but um, so
I
I
can tell
know
you
you've been frustrated, so
well, it's just part of the work. I mean, to me, it's like it's we're out here, ringing the bells and trying to get folks aware. But I'll kick this off if you don't mind with a sort of mini wish list, and that is, I'm
sure.
really anxious to talk with like things like ministerial associations to grow clergy's awareness, so that when somebody comes to them to confide or seek guidance, that we can equip them with just basic knowledge of what the problem looks like and what resources are available if more is needed. So that's one thing I've really been anxious to do is create connections with folks where I could come and speak to clergy groups.
Right. And you talk about Ellen's got her thumb up. Um, the relationships are critical. That's what in addiction recovery, it's relationships and so many things. And yet we are seeing that erode and being so much more difficult. The same thing, relationships are community, and we know we need community, and yet that's harder and harder in the world that we live in. Well, the couple of notes I made was uh, uh, strong ACC, strong accountable care community. Are you connected to strong ACC?
Yes, I'm familiar.
Yeah, so there might be some opportunities through, and that's over 500, 400 and something partners. And there's some different opportunities with Strong ACC, perhaps.
Thank you.
Ellen's here from the city of Bristol, Virginia. That meeting is televised. I would think it could be possible for you to see if you can get on the agenda for it and do a brief presentation. Ellen, you can correct me if that's incorrect.
No, that might be a great idea.
So that could be a way. Also, if you are you connected with Healing Hands or Nikki's Crossroads? So you're connected with the Crossroads. What about Healing Hands?
I'm just familiar, but not worked with them on this topic. So
So if you look at the we have two YouTubes. We had Jody Palaha, who's the ETSU behavioral health, integrated behavioral health. So she spoke, and then the next meeting we had it divided between Healing Hands and Crossroads.
I watched that video. So
Oh, good. Well,
yes.
you might want to see Jody Palaha's also.
Okay.
So, but to be sure to talk with both those agencies for them to be sure that they know. We'll share your information and we'll get our case manager with Family Promise. And we know that people who are experiencing homelessness spend money at the casino.
Yes.
I mean, they don't have enough money to pay for a rent, but they've got enough money to have some entertainment periodically and always, the hope of
The hope. Yeah.
going somewhere different. Ministerial Association, I can check the status of the one in Bristol to see how it's holding together. I know there are some churches that also do minutes for mission or whatever during their church service that could be a possibility as well if you're willing to do some of that.
Okay. Wonderful.
Anyway, Ellen, what's the best way for him to reach out for Bristol, Virginia Council?
I would say go, contact the city manager, Brenda Leeds. I think it would all start with him.
You'll have some different programs, right? Different times a little bit.
I'm sorry, what?
You'll have some different programs occasionally, right?
Yeah, actually, we actually had a presentation the other night for Narcan. So yes, and I think since with the casino being here, I think
It'd be appropriate.
the council's always interested in things like that. But yeah, I would start with the manager.
Thank you.
Yep, I think that would be great. And the fact that it is recorded is also nice for getting it out there. People do go back and look. And ASAC, Linda Austin's been here at this a couple of times, but it's time that we get her back. So that's good to hear that. And we'll have to ask her to be back for a program.
The other thing I'll mention just to sow the seed, but in Washington County, we're really fortunate in that our prevention programming is in all four of our high schools and our middle schools.
Right.
So we go in and do a couple of different curriculums. One's called Teen Mental Health First Aid, which is our 10th grade classrooms, fantastic curriculum. And then we also do what we call life skills, 10-week session. We do it in 6th grade and 9th grade. So, but ideally what we want to do is some form of youth focused gaming and gambling harm curriculum in the schools. We're not ready. The school system is just not where we're at yet. I think we'll get there. But so the reason I mention that though is what would be amazing is to try to find groups of youth that we could potentially present to outside of the school system, whatever that might be. So, that would be another key point. And I have access to some really strong curriculum and material. Love to work, but it's one of my things that I love the most is getting to go up to Patrick Henry and work with the 9th and 10th graders. I love staying connected that way. And of course, I'm able to weave my knowledge of gambling harm through everything else I'm doing with substance use and so forth. But another thing on my wish list is access to community-based youth endeavors and groups.
Like Boys and Girls Club and
yes,
Girls
ma'am, exactly. Yep.
Well, we certainly could help with that. Also, Appalachian Promise does Youth Networking Alliance since 1999, and it's focused on children, youth, and families. It has to be families, but it's less focused on housing, and it's more, and it brings together Tennessee, Virginia, Bristol,
Yeah.
primarily, a little Washington County or Sullivan County. And I'll add you to that list so you'll know what's going on. We had been meeting online. We're doing a little bit more in person. Again, the numbers, the last time we met in person, there's probably close to 20 people. It's a good place for people who are new to their positions to meet some other people, but we network and share. And I could even see if we could offer you, I could check with you and see if you wanted to do a program and see if we'd get some people who would want to hear that. And you could talk about the curriculum stuff that you have, because that's always of interest too.
Sure.
But we sometimes we've had, well, the next meeting's in July, and the Boys and Girls Club and Girls Inc. will probably be doing programming, not able to attend as easily, but Coalition for Kids has been to the last couple of ones that are becoming more active in Bristol, Tennessee. They're out of Johnson City. But yeah, I think that would be a good place too. So for me, I'm going to follow up with Youth and Networking, with our ministerial, and I can check with Strong ACC, because I'm sure Highlands is a member partner of
Yeah, I'm
Strong
not sure, but be
ACC.
curious.
Yeah, I'm sure they are, but I'll check. Yeah, so I'll try to see what.
Well, this is wonderful. Thank you. Appreciate making the
No, I appreciate
connection
you,
and what you all
and
do.
sorry we don't have more people. Ellen, thanks for hanging in.
Yeah, thanks so much. And my phone is ringing. So thank you so much, Mr. Robertson. That was wonderful.
Thank you as
Thank
well.
you,
Good to
Margaret.
meet with you.
All right, take care.
Bye-bye.
All right, so, well, thank you. It's great to meet you. I hope all excited. Are you going